I'm using my influence for impact to empower orphan children around the world.
From the moment we began breathing in the story of Horizon earlier this year, we knew there was so much inspiration and hope to discover. The more we learned about the organization, the mission, and the lives of those involved, the more we resonated with the work being done by Horizon for children across the globe.
You need this as much as we need you.
They're bringing direction where there was desperation and abundance where there was scarcity. Horizon is empowering children to reclaim their birthright of belonging, love, opportunity, and hope. They're building pathways out of poverty and bridges to new beginnings. And with every story that we heard, we found ourselves wanting to be a part of it and to learn more.
My name is Jim Pesky. I am co-founder along with Daryl, but I'm a board member and a grandfather to a lot of these kids.
Yeah, so my name is Daryl Heller, and I'm a co-founder as well, and my role is chairman of the board currently.
So Horizon is an organization that was founded on a core purpose of rescuing orphan children and empowering them to self-sustainability.
When we first began, it was very rescue-centered. And what I mean is rescue-centered is in the early days, you couldn't go into town to get groceries without having 60, 70 street children chase you around asking you for food. And some of them as young as 3, 4 years old, or 13-year-old girls with babies. So you're big on rescuing all of them. Like, how do you pick, right? And then as we transitioned, we got into restoration. How do these kids make it in the long run? I used to spend a lot of time overseas, and I would watch outside of our gates, the village and how it functioned. And the village took care of itself. And I thought, how do we create a village for these kids, not an institution? And that's where the micro-community idea was birthed, where literally everything was on one site. That was the package. It was a village. We were creating villages.
I want to be there in my imagination. What does it look like? What does it feel like?
You're driving down this muddy road in a van packed full of people, and you're seeing grass and mud huts and naked children, and then all of a sudden you come over a rise and you just see this property.
Oasis.
It's an oasis. It's just stunning. And as you pull up, you see these big, huge gates that say Horizon. And then you go for a walk out into the compound, and in one 360 gaze, you can see a library, you can see a school, you can see where the kids sleep in their own beds. You can see poultry, you can see cows, you can see lush gardens like you've never seen before. And there's a harmony about the place that's just, you just don't want to leave. And there's a peace that comes upon you that the whole world falls off your shoulders when you're there. I hate coming home. But most of all, I've always asked, what was the greatest thing that you experienced to our guests? And it's always, you can feel the peace and the love in this place. Just watching the staff engage with each other. When you have farm staff that are in charge of farming, but you watch and they are dads to the children, and how they all take care of each other and share the duties. It's a place of magic.
Peace is the operative word. It captures it better than anything. It's melodic there, it's calm, it's peace. Even though there's so much energy, there's just something inside the body that relaxes, and you feel something you don't feel other places. So you know what the children are experiencing because you're experiencing a small derivative of that.
What I love about Horizon's micro-community model is that orphan children aren't just being placed in an institution to grow up and likely return to poverty, but instead Horizon builds a whole community around their children, designed to not just provide for them, but to heal and empower them well into adulthood and break the cycle. To me, their approach feels less like rescuing and more like empowering. Less like coming in and taking over, and more like paving the way for orphan children to reclaim their human right to happiness, fulfillment, and a bright future.
And ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is self-sustainability as noted by our purpose. And there's two components of that. One is the sustainability relative to the operations. So the farm and a lot of additional wealth generation things that we're doing outside of that farm, though in country, is creating sustainability at a financial level, which is very important in the long term. And then self-sustainability is for those children, and we do that through an inheritance program where we put them on a track of either academic, entrepreneurial, or vocational. And by allowing them to be resourced at one of those levels, they put themselves in a position that it's highly probable that they will become self-sustainable. One of the paradigms out there that we're trying to shift is most people say that 70 to 80% of orphaned children revert back to where they came from. And what we're doing through an inheritance program is trying to invert that model, where we think 80, hopefully higher percent of our kids will be self-sustainable. So they'll come out with an education, they'll come out with a trade, they'll come out with an entrepreneur track. And then another attribute is the wealth generation side, is one that entrepreneurial side of our board and a lot of those key benefactors are very enthusiastic about. And we're just starting to scale that, moving into Honduras, moving into Guatemala. We want to proliferate this across the world. We want to be seen as thought leaders, as innovators. Maybe it'll have to evolve over the next 5 years, 10 years, and if so, that's okay. We're confident that we can do it well. That's how we see the world. We don't just get caught up in this myopic, it's all about a micro-community model. It will transform, it will evolve. We're going to be about seeing the need, seeing the child crisis and saying, what can we do about it? And what is the most effective model that we can create to help mitigate it? We're starting to do for-profit enterprises that we think will put our sustainability numbers at a place that look a lot different than our peer group, and ultimately over time create the true self-sustainability that we're trying to achieve, both from an operational perspective in addition to the self-sustainability that we're trying to help that child create for themselves.
I think in the early days, I would have been just happy that the kids have some milk and a few eggs and some tomatoes, because when we had them, it was bread and water. If I would have known that we could feed the kids, I would have been so happy. I had no idea that we would be supplying most of the tomatoes to grocery stores in our region. I had no idea that we would be exporting eggs to the Sudan. I didn't know that there would be pickup trucks lined up at our gate to come and pick up milk to go to all the other villages. And then we'd be making money that would be then put in place to give the kids an education. I had no idea where this thing was going, but it's been wonderful to watch.
To me, the real-life superheroes that walk among us are ordinary people who move in the direction of extraordinary love to impact the lives of others. I'm always curious about the origin stories of such heroes. How does someone go from living for themselves to living for others? When is the moment that love is louder than all of the other things in this life that call us to think only of ourselves and our own ambitions? I'm so inspired by the openness it takes to walk this earth ready to turn in the direction of people in need. I wanted to know more about that moment and what led up to it.
My personal journey would have started in Uzbekistan in 1999. I was on a mission trip, found myself in a state-run orphanage. That is a very despicable environment, very substandard. There was stacked beds, there was kids that were tied to the bed so they couldn't jump out of bed. Had been kids defecating on the floors, a concrete floor, so they would wash it down. And it just drew parallels to growing up in a farm, that these kids were treated like we treated farm animals. And that broke my heart, but within minutes of being in that room, my eyes fixated on two kids. One in particular had dark hair, 4 or 5 years old, and he had a gash in his head. It was an open wound, and it was infested, and there was flies and such. So I just lost it emotionally, and I left that group of about a dozen people, and I walked out into the courtyard, and I just cried like a baby, and I prayed. And that was the transformation of my life. I simply decided that to whom much is given, much is required. Life is not about me or my career. It is about helping others. And that was the impetus, that stirred emotion. I wrote a business plan on the way home. Soon thereafter, my uncle Larry Kreider, we also consider a co-founder of this organization, paired me up with this maniac.
It's funny because I think I had the same kind of wake-up call. Mine started in my basement in Canada, watching a commercial by an organization that does incredible work with orphaned children, about to put two huge T-bone steaks on a barbecue. But the commercial was all of a sudden these kids. And I looked at the steaks and I was like, wow, what a difference. But I can remember too at that time praying and saying, I hate this stuff. I hate seeing it on the screen because I can't do anything about it. And that was sincere. But I just sort of looked up and probably said the most honest prayer in my life, which was, don't show me this stuff ever again unless you want me to do something. And it was only about a month after that that I had my feet in the church world and in the business world. And Daryl's uncle, Larry Kreider, called me and said, you want to come to Kenya? And I said, why? And he says, you can teach both. And you have both lessons, saves me a trip for somebody else. And I said, sure, I'll go. And we went, did a conference. It went so well that he said, would you stay another week? I'm going home. I want you to fly to these cities and teach at these cities. And I said, sure, I'll go. And I went. Well, they forgot to pick me up for 3 days. And so I'm in a strange city in Kenya, don't know anybody, don't have a cell phone, all by myself, but being the maniac that I am, I ended up on the streets for 3 days. And I saw street child after street child after street child. And the ones that really broke my heart were the little 4 and 5-year-old girls. I was trying to wrap my head around, what do we do? How does this happen? What does this mean? They finally did pick me up. And if you know anything about Kenya and the cities, traffic is horrendous. And we're driving down this busy highway. There's diesel trucks everywhere. There's a smell of diesel everywhere. There's people everywhere. And right in the middle median is this little boy. And what they do is they sniff glue because it numbs the pain. And they hold their sleeves up to their nose like this with this glue bottle. And he was standing in the middle of the median, and he was so high on glue that he was just waving, almost falling over, and on both sides were these transport trucks going by. And I looked away, and I just heard this voice say, you look back. And I looked back, and what I heard was, if that was your son Sam, what would you do to save him? And like Daryl, I broke down and said, I'll give the rest of my life to this if I can save one boy like that. And that was my initiation into Horizon.
A common thread that I see in people who are able to walk in faith and follow the call on their lives in big ways is how they're able to see meaning and connection in the world around them. It's as if everywhere they look, there's confirmation of their purpose and affirmation to keep moving in the direction of love instead of fear.
I'm going to tell you a story of the Cape buffalo. I've been on safari many times. They're huge, bigger than the trucks we were riding around in. And everywhere you went, these beasts had these little birds, oxpeckers is what they're called, and they're only 2 ounces. And they would be on their nose and on their, and I would just say, why do these big beasts put up with these stupid little birds everywhere? Like, why don't they shake them off? Like, these things are like 2-3 tons. And so I did my homework and found out that the parasites like to go in the ears and the eyes of the Cape buffaloes. And if they're left unchecked, they will infiltrate, lay their eggs in the animal's brain and kill the beast, a parasite. But it's the oxpecker that pecks these things out and keeps them clean. And it intrigued me that a 2-ton beast can't survive without a 2-ounce bird. And I started to think, why am I getting this picture in my head? What's this story? And this is where we got the whole symbiotic relationship. And it might surprise people. At Horizon, there's 2 voices that we're trying to listen to and speak for. We're definitely trying to speak for the orphaned child. And so we become that voice by building, the micro-communities that Daryl has talked about. But we're also a voice for those here in the West that are looking for meaning. They need a voice too. Our younger generation needs a voice. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? What's the purpose of my life? At Horizon, I think we can provide a voice for both. In that voice, see both of them come together. And in the fulfillment of bringing them together, that's when we really see Horizon produce what we want it to produce, which is life on both sides. And you need both sides to do it. You think you're the helper. You think you're going to give. And I've seen so many people come back wrecked. And the wrecked happen when they realize that they were impacted in a way that they never ever could have been impacted, and that really they got more, they received more than they ever could have given.
There's so much in it where you know you're doing things for others, and it just brings this level of substance and meaning and purpose inside your life that makes you feel different. And when you go plug yourself back into the West, in this case, it's troubling because you just forever have changed the lens that you see life through, and your perspective changes. And the first couple of weeks back, Jimmy and I are both fresh back, and I've struggled. It's been very contemplative time. I've spent hours in my car driving around. That's kind of how I get. That's my self-reflective time. That's my take inventory time. That's my figure out my life. So I just spent Sunday a couple hours just driving around, and I learned so much about myself, and it all tracked back to this trip. So it's powerful. You come back with purpose and inspiration. So it just transforms you. It shakes me for weeks thereafter every time.
We've been challenged lately by this idea of slacktivism, that passive way that most of us take in stories like this. Maybe we like it on Facebook or share it with a friend or talk about it over coffee. And in doing these things, we're certainly showing our solidarity and helping to pass the good feelings along. But true activism, the kind that brings purpose and meaning to our lives, is not passive. True activism is when we allow ourselves to be moved to action, when we start looking for our place in helping the cause, when we are stirred to donating, volunteering, mobilizing, and intentionally elevating a message. If you're moved by what you've seen here and motivated to add your thumbprint to this important work, there is a place for you. Connect with Horizon through their website and join us in using our collective influence for impact to change the course of history.
In terms of, partnering with us, we are an all-inclusive organization. There's so many different ways you can partner with us. There's the logical monetary side. So we have something called 100% promise. And that simply means that when you take one of your hard-earned dollars and put it towards us in a partnership, that 100% of that goes right to our work. So we don't have an admin burden, we don't have the 15-20% that most organizations do. So our fiduciary is at the highest levels. That's something at a board level that is really, really important to us, and it is clearly part of the tenets of this organization. That's a piece of it. We want people to experience what we experience. We want their ability to find purpose in their life. We want their ability to drive around on a Sunday as I did and just see things that I had never seen in my life because I got clarity and cleared my head. But beyond that, we want people's heart.
And we want to know, how do you fit in to the same calling that we have in our lives, and how do we partner, genuinely partner, and that together as we partner, our lives will all be richer and more blessed, but then again, we'll be a greater blessing to those outside. You can sponsor children, you can get involved on teams, task teams to come and do duties. You can get involved in task teams here in North America for fundraising and engagement of young people in schools. And I would encourage you, like if you're sitting at home going, this is daunting, how do I do this? I would just say, take the first step.
I'll play off that. Jimmy said it well, but it's one small single step. Have the courage to take one step. And when you take one step, it's probably going to inspire the second step, the third step, the fourth step. When I go there and I see one child, just one child, can I really help? One child's helping. So not only is it one child for us, it's not just 10, it's not just 50, 100, it's hundreds now, soon to be thousands. But if you just take it down to one child, that's all that matters. That's a precious human being that has dignity, that ultimately deserves better. Distill it to that, one child, one step.
You can get involved at whatever level you want to get involved with what we're doing. And Daryl and I have had the privilege of getting involved on every level. But we're human beings, and we're drawn to certain kids who become more than just our kids, they become friends as they grow up. I followed a young girl since she was 9 years old with nothing, no education, nothing, not even any clothes. And she shared her vision way back then of being a banker, of all things. There weren't even any banks in her village. Years later, she has her master's degree in finance. She now works for Horizon, and she's in charge of all our alumni. Now she's sponsoring kids, and she goes once a month and mentors the young girls, I can sit back now and just watch her go. And like when Daryl says, you know, that it's one kid. No, now she's gonna touch many, and they'll touch many, and they'll touch many, and that's our legacy.
What will your legacy be? Do you breathe in this story filled with gratitude that there are people like Daryl and Jimmy and the rest of the Horizon team in the world who are dedicated to this beautiful work? Or are you ready to take a deeper breath and breathe something new out into the world? Whether you're inspired to support this beautiful work or you're motivated to follow the call of love in your own life to make a positive difference for others in your own way, we're excited to see what you will exhale as a result of breathing in this story. All along the way, as always,
I hope you're making the most of your one wild and precious now.